The case on behalf of Abu Zubaydah, arguing that the CIA and Mitchell and Jessen tortured Abu Zubaydah. That case is going to be more sensitive. So the CIA hasn't really put the issue in its entirety behind it yet. We have to wait and see what happens with Abu Zubaydah. My guess is that because the Abu Zubaydah case is so much more serious, because Abu Zubaydah was the guinea pig of the CIA's torture program, that the CIA will seek to have that case dismissed.
In another case of brutal torture, Iraq's Prime Minister has acknowledged the country's security forces abused prisoners during the operation to liberate Mosul from Islamic State. Many were suspected extremist militants who had not faced trial. Please be aware that some very graphic images are about to be shown. An investigation was launched after a photographer released pictures of the torture. Suspects were beaten, raped and tortured to death. We talked to the photographer Ali Arkadi earlier. When the images came to light, he described what he witnessed.
I thought they were heroes. They were so brave, fighting on the front lines every day. But then I saw the other side, the torture, the raping, the killing. First, they didn't want me to film the torture and other bad stuff. It affected me, my psychology. I kept thinking about the torture, all those people and their suffering. It got worse and worse, and after 5 weeks, it became so horrible that I decided to publish everything. It was unbearable, but I made myself continue to film because I knew it was important. They tortured people and killed them, over and over.
Well, we heard this morning that the Foreign Minister Al-Jafari has requested the assistant of the UN to look into the crimes committed in Mosul. And that's just good, another positive steps, because Iraq do need assistance from the UN. We can feel that maybe some of the pressure has been put on the government to take further investigation into the matter, which is, we find it very positively. That's what we're looking for from the government of Iraq, is to look into this kind of incident, to seize and also to take people hold people accountable about these incidents.
RT is campaigning to help orphans stranded in war-torn Iraq to find their relatives and return home. They were taken there by radicalized parents who joined Islamic State. We're appealing for family members who might recognize the youngsters to get in touch with us. And some relatives may have been found, but many are still waiting.
Скажу, где мама. Я скажу, мама, вот за речкой. И все. За речкой были снайперы. Снайперы стреляли в маму сюда и в руку, в голову, в руку. И потом она умерла, потом... Я сразу опознала своего племянника на видео, как первый раз посмотрела. А это Дадака и Гультейка.
Это ваша девочка?
Это? Это внучка, модельная девочка.
А мама как ее зовут?
Марина.
Мария?
Мадина.
Лоб, глаза, брови, у нее разговор, речь, все у нее, голос у нее.
She's desperate to prove the girl we filmed in Baghdad is indeed her granddaughter, having lost her once and being in the dark about Mariam's whereabouts for over 3 years.
Они в 14 году, Новый год, они здесь были. 4-го связь потеряла, С 4 они ночью уехали. Это муж, видимо, забрал их.
Connection with Mariam and her parents was completely lost for a while until the family got a phone call from an unknown number.
Вот так мы ушли. Через 2 года, 3 года вернулся. Коран тоже учим. Лечение тоже буду делать. Вернулся, сказал.
Since then, only mysterious calls a few times a year. At one point, even a bit of video. To show they got a bright future ahead in the land of jihad. Now that Patimat Zagra is just a step away from bringing her granddaughter back home after all the horrors, we let her record a message to Mariam.
Ты не бойся, я приду за тобой. Вот посмотри, твоя игрушка. Ты узнала или не узнала это?
Well, we've also been contacted by a couple from Tajikistan. They believe they've recognized their granddaughter, who's also called Mariam. The girl says she saw both her parents die and that she is originally from Tajikistan. We're continuing to look for the relatives of these children. If you have any information that could help, please contact us at the email address on your screen, children@rttv.ru. That's news for now on RT International. Join me again in around 30 minutes' time for more.
When lawmakers manufacture consent instead of public wealth. When the ruling classes protect only themselves. When the financial merry-go-round lifts only the 1% up. It's time to ignore middle-of-the-road signals. Going underground, bringing real news to Britain and the world.
E é ruim, é porque quando eu vou pra escola, tem polícia aqui, bandido aqui.
Sai da rua, volta! Os nossos mortos têm voz!
Isso foi um crime bárbaro, um crime horroroso. O que ele cometeu com meu filho, ele vai ter que pagar.
As ações foram encontrados 7 corpos no interior da comunidade, mas não foram decorrência, até onde a gente tem informações de confronto entre forças policiais.
Tem vergonha?
ISIS militants have just shelled the patrol base under Lieutenant Rady Manessa's command. Enemy troop movements have been spotted on the other side of the river. Here in Marawi, 2 groups of militants have joined forces. Both groups' leaders have declared their determination to fight for an independent Islamic state in the Philippines. Even after 2 months of fighting, the army keeps finding hidden weapons and explosives. Mopping up operations in areas where civilians used to live are now a daily occurrence.
Inaanap lang namin yung mga kontrabando tulad ng mga baril or illegal
deserted na area na as a scene ng Walking Dead. Unbelievable. Hindi mo ma-expect na mangyayari talaga, especially sa sarili mong lugar, sa hometown mo.
Welcome to Sophie & Co. Me, Sophie Shevardnadze. India is set to become a global leader in the decades to come. One of the region's key players, how will India project its economic and political might on the international arena? Well, I'm here in Delhi to speak to one of the world's most influential people, India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi.
Asia is witnessing a new giant emerging. A country with the world's largest youth population, India has every reason to believe it will soon become a global leader in the coming decades. With its leaders engaging in economic diplomacy everywhere from its immediate neighborhood to the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, what can it offer the world going forward? Can the huge potential for India's growing economy be sapped by persistent inequality and poverty? And what is India's current leader doing to prevent that from happening?
Prime Minister Modi, good day. It's great to have you on our show today. Hello. So you've been at the helm of the country for 3 years now. Obviously, many things to be proud of. Is there something that has disappointed you in these 3 years?
Yes, it has been 3 years. There has been a lot of talk about this date in my country as well. Now, as far as the economy is concerned, all of the world's credit rating agencies rate India quite high. Throughout these 3 years, we have been working to make our dreams come true. People appreciate this. In a democratic country, if you have support of the people, this means your policy is right, and you are doing the right thing. Our slogan is, together with all, development for all. From the global point of view, India achieved a lot in these 3 years. The world expects a lot from India, and India does its best to justify these expectations. So, you can say that these 3 years were years of satisfaction and happiness. Based on our experience in these 3 years, we expect that we will make even better progress in the next 2 years. And we will be able to achieve all our goals. Our dream is to improve the lives of even the poorest people in our country. And we really hope that it will soon come true.
We're going to get back to Indian economy and some of the main reforms that you've initiated. But before, I wanted to ask you about India-Russia relations. The two countries have very cordial relations for decades now. Russia is India's one of the key partners, main arms supplier to your country. You have said once that Russia-India relationship can go further than just a political relationship. Even though it's not very popular to be friends with Russia nowadays, can this relationship go deeper than just arms contracts, maybe civil aviation, nuclear energy?
I will have to correct you a little. India and Russia have a long-standing history of friendship. Our friendship has proven strong at every turn along the way. We have been together through the hard times and the times of prosperity. Our friendship is not about give and take or buy and sell, it's about trust. When we fight climate change, we do it together. When we fight terrorism, we do it together. We also work together to fight poverty in India. We work together in research and innovation, agriculture, and even crisis management. There is no area where India and Russia cannot come together and cooperate. Recently, in the state of Gujarat, we have organized the Vibrant Gujarat Investment Summit, and the Russian Deputy Prime Minister was there the whole time. He became involved in the economic development of the Gujarat state. So, our cooperation is really quite diverse. It is not exactly limited to arms trade.
Prime Minister, I had a chance to talk to people here in Delhi before I interviewed you for a couple of days, and they view you as this great reformer. And some of the programs you've introduced, like Make in India, India, the startup country, those are, of course, the programs to make India a flagship of world innovation. You also tout the concept of self-reliance, this Swadeshi concept. Can the Indian economy be self-reliant in times of irreversible globalization?
Today's world is very interconnected and interdependent. This is the age of technology. Technology reflects what is changing in the world. Technology is changing man into the new man, the network man. So many great changes have taken place. Today, with globalization and prospects of a global scale, we have only one path, and that is development. And India has made significant progress with that. Our top priority is a happy family. The whole world is one family. That is our philosophy in India. And this is the foundation of all progress in India. Society, the social aspect, is the focal point of economic development for us. We have to try harder to alleviate special conditions in the underdeveloped areas of our country. I have to bring electricity to those areas that do not have it, and that's the first order of business. In those houses that burn wood in their stoves, I have to bring gas stoves to those houses. That is what we're doing. That is what the slogan is about, together with all, development for all. Our strength is that 65% of our population is under the age of 35. That's 800 million people. This is our biggest asset. It should help India and, in fact, the whole world. This is what we're doing.
So despite a very significant economic growth, Indian society is still affected by stratification and inequality. Do you feel like this could hinder India's role as a main player in the world for the future?
The whole world thinks today that the 21st century is the century of Asia. And many people think that India plays a big role in that. And I have no reason to argue with that if the whole world feels this way. Our country has a population of 1.2 billion people. We have traditions of thousands of years. We have great diversity, 100 languages, and 1,700 dialects. Our country is very diverse, and we do our best to help everybody achieve self-realization. This is the centerpiece of all of our plans. We want to develop together with every segment of our society. This is what our slogan means. together with all, development for all. We have been investing heavily to make sure that even the most poor people are included in the main economic process. We want both small villages and big cities to enjoy the same level of services. We want to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor, between the educated people and the uneducated. All these people should have equal opportunities. There should be no digital divide. This is at the core of our planning and everything we do. And so far, we're quite successful at it.
We're going to take a short break right now. When we're back, we'll continue talking to India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi.
We all willingly accepted the risk of being shot, wounded, taken prisoner, but none of us signed up to be friggin' poisoned by our own people.
I've seen stuff that was nuclear, biological, and chemical products that said do not burn. Truck tires, all types of styrofoam and polystyrenes, batteries, trucks.
There was a complete denial, I think, at all levels of government that there was any connection between burn pits and what these brave soldiers were suffering from.
To compensate every soldier, Marine, airman, and sailor that was on the ground that are complaining about illnesses from their exposure from the burn pits would literally send the VA broke. And they don't want to pay it, so the waiting and the decades, a lot of those soldiers will die in that time, and they won't have to pay anything.
Call them for help and get the middle finger. The VA's new model is delay, deny, hope you die.
Most people think to stand out in this business, you need to be the first one on top of the story or the person with the loudest voice or the biggest ratings. In truth, to stand out in the news business, you just need to ask the right questions and demand the right answers. Question more.
Ham and hot dogs may not only be tasty, but also deadly.
A relationship between cancer and nitrate was proved, suggested.
No, proved, and a fairly strong one. There were 2,000 rats involved in the study. It's a very extensive study done by a well-respected scientist.
Do chemicals that add the appetizing pink color really increase the risk of cancer?
Nitrosamines are known to induce damage in the large intestine.
Is it a shared skepticism?
I do not believe that that risk is true.
By independent scientists.
So did the meat industry pay you for this?
I received some compensation for my time as well as the others.
Why is that?
The meat lobby, they definitely didn't like what we were doing.
And if you want to learn more, you'll get a definite answer.
Get the flying out of here and do not come back. Thank you.
Is it big business against health?
This study shows that all standards are in safety line.
As India's might grows, fueled by economic gains, New Delhi must now face the dangers plaguing the region around it. Confronted by the instability of terrorism on one side and the shadow of China on the other, Can India manage the responsibility that comes with the global leadership role it now covets? How will that change its foreign policy? And does it have the strength and skill to navigate its journey to the top?
And we're here on Sophia Call talking to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Prime Minister, so one of your most important reforms, initiatives, is a bold currency reform. It actually ended the circulation of high-denomination banknotes in order to combat tax evasion, bribery, to make Indian economy less cash-based. And, you know, even I'm feeling the effects of it because it's not always easy to withdraw cash from ATMs here. And despite the hardships, people have supported this very fundamental, very bold reform. Are you going to go further? Are you going to implement some labor reforms, make hiring people easier, break up state monopolies?
You see, my goal is to transform my country. And the transformation of my country involves reforming it. But reforms have to be of the right kind. Our government is proactive. It makes decisions based on what our country needs. If need be, we make far-reaching and sometimes tough decisions. That is in our tradition. But all the decisions we make are well thought through and adhere to the principle of for everyone's benefit, for everyone's happiness. The people put trust in our decisions. When the people feel that we make the right decisions, they support even the toughest of them. We saw this with the currency reform. We saw that people supported it. My goal is to leave behind the regular banknotes, the cash, and move to digital accounts. I want our society to be a society without cash. Our goal is to create a society with minimal amounts of cash in circulation, and introducing technology could prove to be of great help in that. We adopted a number of initiatives, and we believe they would result in considerable success. We've worked hard also on the labor reform. That's because our government cares about the poor. Now, more and more young people find jobs now and don't have to leave the country to do so. Taking these two things into consideration, we've managed to introduce a number of reforms in this sphere.
Prime Minister, I would want to touch upon India's role on the international arena. Let me start with Afghanistan. Taliban and ISIS are gaining ground in the country. Kabul is seeking India's friendship. How can India influence the situation and help the government there?
If we're talking about Afghanistan, then it's mainly terrorism we have to discuss. It's terrorism that is humanity's foe. Terrorism is not restricted by borders. Today, it rears its head in one place, and tomorrow it might be in another place. So, all the forces that stand for humanism have to unite and fight terrorism together to eradicate it and save humanity. We need to get rid of such notions as good terrorism or bad terrorism, my terrorism or your terrorism. The United Nations also needs to be proactive and show determination in fighting terrorism. For a long time, a resolution has been gathering dust there in the United Nations, with no decision and no discussion on it, the one about defining the term terrorism and its supporters. No decision has been made on this resolution. So when we look at Afghanistan in this context, India is Afghanistan's friend, and Afghanistan is India's friend. We have cultural ties with Afghanistan. We have economic ties with Afghanistan as well, so we are connected through cooperation. Afghanistan faces a multitude of problems at this point, and India contributes to its economic development and helps build government institutions. For example, we built a parliament building for them. We're building dams for them. Whether it's developing capabilities or labor resources, India will accompany Afghanistan on this path. India is resolute. We have decided to act as good friends to Afghanistan. But we believe that Afghanistan itself should be the one to solve its problems. Afghanistan has to be the one to find the solution and implement it. Only then would that be a lasting solution. And we need to help Afghanistan, all of us. The whole of the international community has to help Afghanistan.
Despite an ages-old territorial dispute, China is India's largest trading partner. According to recent polls, Indians are very wary of such heavy involvement, China, in the Indian economy. Can that make India turn away from trade ties in Beijing? I mean, we're talking about $70 billion of trade ties. How easy is it going to be to turn away from that?
We cannot argue with the entire world saying that the 21st century is the century of Asia. It means that both India and China will influence the situation in the world in the coming decades. India and China have good relations. We are investing in China more and more, and China is investing more and more in India. Our economic ties are developing and expanding to include more and more areas of cooperation. The structure of our respective economies lends itself to mutually beneficial cooperation, rather than competition or confrontation. Knowing this constitutes our strength. We will move forward. It will give both of our countries an impetus for further economic development. They are interested in the things we are good at, and we are interested in the things they are good at. We could complement each other. Fully recognizing this, India intends to move forward. But there are many other countries in the world, not just India and China, which is why we always strive to observe the international law and expect others to do the same. This is our responsibility as a country of 1.25 billion people. We will safeguard our people's interests, but we will lend support when it comes to safeguarding other people's interests. We need to move forward, respecting each other's interests. We live in a time when all countries need to respect each other, regardless of their size. Each country is important and it deserves respect. With these 3 or 4 principles in mind, we develop our relations with other countries, which enables us to move forward.
Prime Minister Modi, thank you very much for this interview. We wish you all the best.
Thank you for coming.
Daesh отнесен мер.
Операция прошла весьма...
The city of Minamisoma was hit the hardest by the 2011 tsunami. But it was damaged mostly by the radiation after the Fukushima nuclear disaster.
もともと何もない田舎町で何の魅力もないとこだったけど、まあお魚が取れて山があったから山の山菜とかも取れたけども。
Decontamination is not complete, but many locals could not leave their houses and farms.
私が避難したんだ。本当私はやっぱ動物置いていけないし、避難しないって言ったら父にめちゃくちゃ怒られて。
They stay strong like their ancestors centuries ago did.
こういう涙の生活だよ。朝から晩まで。もう楽しいとか嬉しいとかそんなこと一度もないよ。
Will their wounded souls find a way to rebuild their lives in the wounded landscape?
Daesh отнесен мер.
Операция прошла весьма...
But, you know, 50 feet behind me, there were people lying face down on the floor.
Terrorists who killed 14 people in Spain were planning an even bigger attack, according to police. The country is in mourning after vehicles were driven into crowds in Barcelona and the resort town of Cambrils. The attacks are the latest in a series of incidents in which vehicles have been used to strike terror in Europe, echoing deadly events in France, Germany and the UK since last summer. Also, a knife-wielding man stabs multiple people in the Finnish city of Turku before being shot and detained by police. 2 lose their lives. And the psychologists behind the CIA's so-called enhanced interrogation program agreed to settle a court case brought on behalf of torture victims. Just after 10 p.m. this Friday night here in Moscow. Welcome to RT International. Good to have you with us. I'm Ewan O'Neill. Our top story this hour. Spanish police say the suspects in the country's deadliest terror attacks in over a decade were planning an even bigger atrocity. On Thursday night, a van was driven into crowds in the popular tourist area of Las Ramblas in Barcelona, killing 13 and injuring over 100 people. Then, hours later, a car crashed into a group of people in the resort town of Cambrils, leaving one dead and wounding multiple others. Islamic State has claimed responsibility. A word of warning, the video we're about to show you is highly disturbing.
I come down here and the van was coming down the Rambla and I was completely unaware of it until it was pretty much alongside me, and then at this point I saw everyone from the bars start running, and I heard it through my music when it was so close to me, you know. Everyone just panicked, like everyone ran, you know. No one kind of knew what to do. I was next to it when it stopped, and I didn't turn around and look. But you know, 50 feet behind me, there were people lying face down on the floor. Like I saw the videos afterwards, and it wasn't nice to watch. It's pretty horrific.
Well, this is how the events unfolded in Barcelona. At around 5 p.m. local time, a van was driven into the popular pedestrianised street of La Rambla, which was packed with tourists. It travelled 500 metres, going up to speeds of 80 kilometres per hour and ploughing through masses of people before stopping at a central square. The driver then fled on foot. Kate Partridge has this from Barcelona.
Behind me, in La Plaza de la Boqueria, right in the heart of La Rambla, they've started to lay a makeshift memorial. There have been candles there, there have been messages. One was really sadly written, which was, "We remember the innocents," and that summed up the mood, how sombre it was. And the people laying their tributes there, teddy bears, balloons, flowers and candles.
Nothing like that ever happened to me. I hope they'll find the perpetrators and everything will be all right.
It's unbelievable if you go back to the Rambla and so many people are here and it's like normal life, but some put some candles on this place, and well, terrorists everywhere.
I feel incredibly lucky, and we did consider that, like just continue shopping. It's just so nice to be out. But we just said, oh no, we'll go back and catch up with our other friends, and that decision was just crucial. And I just can't believe that we did that and we missed this incident. So,
but now La Rambla has started to go back to how exactly it was before, if there is a normality as there was before. Police have taken away the tape that was along the sides that we first saw when we first came here, and the businesses, particularly all the cabins that have always been here, are now starting to open up. People are coming in, more tourists are arriving, wheeling their suitcases almost in an act of defiance. In many ways, you can't believe that this actually was a crime scene and it was a scene of a terrible tragedy. But La Rambla and Barcelona is now trying to get back to some semblance of normality, but with a slightly sombre feeling out of respect for the dead and a memory for what happened here only a day ago.
Four people are currently in police detention. 3 of them are Moroccans, 1 is Spanish. Earlier media reports suggested a 17-year-old, Musa Ukabir, was a main suspect. However, police have said they haven't been able to identify the driver as yet. Well, the second incident, as we mentioned, took place in the resort town of Cambrils, around 130 kilometres south of Barcelona. Police opened fire on a car after it failed to stop for a security check. 6 people were injured and 1 later died of her injuries. All 5 attackers inside the vehicle were shot dead. The authorities are now saying that one of those killed, in the vehicle may have been the driver of the van in central Barcelona. Well, since the attacks took place, it's emerged that one family had already been affected by terror before in Europe. Daniel Hawkins reports.
Now, the tragic reality of the situation is that this is now such a cross-border threat that even families who are vacationing on the continent find themselves victims of terror attacks multiple times, whichever country they travel to on the continent. One such example, Scott Haytyan, his daughter was in the Bataclan theatre during the attack in Paris in November 2015. 18 months on, he finds himself in the middle of yet another terrorist atrocity, bringing back some very painful memories. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Horrible, because I was just bringing my niece here and didn't know what was going to happen. My daughter was in the Bataclan when that blew up. She still can't. She still has nightmares. And can't reconcile herself with staying in her own country.
Now, we actually spoke to Mr. Haytyan last year, interviewing him after his daughter was involved in the Bataclan attacks, and got his thoughts on how optimistic he was on this threat being tackled effectively, the threat of terror being neutralized in Europe. He very much was not optimistic, saying that there was very little chance things could ever be the same again.
The big problem is that ISIS has a unitary message and a unitary and universal appeal, and the forces opposing them do not. And we don't know really how to handle such a movement.
Now, another example of people being caught up in a double jeopardy, if you like, Manchester resident Chris Pawley. He narrowly escaped being caught up in the Manchester Arena bombings just a few months ago. He actually left the area just seconds before the bomb was detonated. He was nearby when that van mowed down dozens of people on the boulevard. These attacks are something that we've sat down together and covered, sadly, many times over the last year to 18 months or so. They've become a pattern across the continent. They all bear strikingly deadly similarities. Minimal planning, preparation, training, equipment is required to carry out these attacks.
Move back! Keep on moving!
Now, a lot of people have drawn a clear foreign policy link between these attacks and foreign policy. Spain, however, is very interesting because, of course, Spain last fell victim back in 2004 to Islamist terror, the 2004 Madrid train bombings. That had a big impact on the election at the time, and the Prime Minister, the incoming Prime Minister, withdrew Spanish troops from Iraq as a direct result. Since then, there have been no attacks, but this really goes to show ISIL have fulfilled their pledge of targeting Westerners in every major European city. If you remember, after the Nice attacks of 2016, the Prime Minister at the time, Manuel Valls, he stated that terror is a new reality in France, something people have to learn to live with. His comments at the time very much provoked controversy and criticism, but what we've seen today really proves that this is not only a new reality in France alone, but on the whole of the continent. Just how safe do people feel now? I think many in Barcelona, in Spain, indeed in Europe, will be questioning that in the aftermath of this latest attack.
Well, police are also linking the attacks to a blast on Wednesday night in a house in a small town not far from Barcelona. It was initially thought to have been a gas leak, but police now say it was a homemade explosive device that destroyed the building. Counter-terrorism expert Temitope Olodo says people need to be more aware of evolving threats.
There's no doubt in my mind that we are now going through a new phase of violence, extremism, being carried out by Islamic jihadists. I think we need to change our narrative and the way in which we approach these individuals. I think we need to be much tougher with them. We need to make them understand that human rights is not absolute. He who comes to equity must come to equity with clean hands, and these individuals will not get away with this barbaric act that they are carrying out. I think we need to start becoming more aware. I think there is more that could be done by the Muslim community in trying to rein down some of the individuals that they identify as being vulnerable to violence, extremism, and reporting them to security agencies. I think the Muslim community could issue a fatwa, saying that, this kind of action is not acceptable, and individuals involved and their parents should be working hard to collar their kids who are carrying out these acts.
Okay, moving on. Finnish officials say 2 people have been killed, 6 injured in a stabbing attack in the southwestern city of Turku. Police have shot and detained 1 person who they believe was likely acting alone. Authorities say terrorism has not been ruled out as a motive. And people have been urged to stay away from the city centre. Security measures have been stepped up at airports and railway stations too. We spoke to a local journalist.
Several people have been asking whether or not they can confirm that the perpetrators were shouting Allah Akbar. Police did not confirm that, but they did say that 2 people have been died and several other injured, and several have been going under surgery in the Turku hospital. The perpetrator have been shot on the leg and had been detained by the Finnish police. He is not born in Finland. Eyewitnesses in Finnish television said that the perpetrator have been a kind of a dark-skinned person, let's put it this way. Social media is sending around interesting videos where dark-skinned people were running with baseball bats in hand on the streets of Turku. It has not been confirmed by the police whether or not this has been connected to this incident. We also heard from social media that Helsinki is in alert because they have thoughts about a similar attack carried out in Helsinki. That could be one of the reasons why the Finnish police put or let's say, put this way, put some helicopters and reinforce the airports and the railway station in downtown Helsinki and other important traffic points.
Well, the police did reiterate that terrorism is not one of the avenues being pursued at present, although in light of what happened in Spain, the first reaction of many in Turku has been to assume the worst. Here's Medina Kochnova.
The incident that took place in Finland was quick to spark panic, with alarming posts about another terror attack spreading through social media. And this is the new reality, really, when people see headlines like this, and these headlines popped up just within the first hour after the attack. Now, we see words like knife-wielding attacker, multiple victims, stabbing terror. Well, people immediately think of yet another terrorist attack, and no one even waits for any confirmation from officials. And this just demonstrates the level of fear many people are experiencing.
They're potentially breaking the Terrorism Act, if they disseminate...
safe anymore. Eyewitnesses on local TV were claiming that there were 3 attackers and that they were not Finns and they had dark skin. Now, a few moments after the incident took place, a video emerged, apparently showing the attacker screaming, "God is great" in Arabic, right before being shot by police. Well, people were reposting this video, repeating the claim that he was shouting just that. But then it turned out that someone in the video was just screaming, "Look out," in Finnish. Well, this just shows that people are seeing terror everywhere now.
To other news stories this hour, the American Civil Liberties Union has hailed a historic victory after a case involving the CIA's torture program was settled. It was filed against 2 psychologists who earned over $80 million from developing the agency's so-called enhanced interrogation program. Because of their status as private contractors, the lawsuit targeted them as private citizens. The plaintiffs were 2 torture survivors and the family of Gul Rahman, a man who died in a secret CIA prison. Here's how a partially declassified CIA report described what happened to him.
Treated Rahman harshly because of Rahman's alleged stature, his uncompromising reaction to the interrogation and lack of cooperation, the pressure on to break him, and lack of experience with a committed interrogation resister. On November 2002, ordered or approved the guards placing Rahman in the short chain position, whereby he was compelled Dr. Rahman's death by hypothermia.
And check out.
Well, CIA's torture methods have repeatedly been criticised by human rights activists. Here's a reminder of some of the other so-called interrogation techniques reportedly used in America's secret prisons.
Oh, sure.
The psychologists' lawyers claim their clients were public servants whose actions were authorized by the U.S. government. They say the actions were legal and done in an effort to protect innocent lives from suspected terrorists. An attorney for the American Civil Liberties Union says the case sets an important precedent.
This is a historic victory for our clients and the rule of law. This outcome shows that there are consequences for torture and that survivors can and will hold those responsible for torture accountable. It is a clear warning for anyone who thinks they can torture with impunity.
Well, we discussed the implications of the settlement with former CIA analyst and whistleblower John Kiriaka.
This is absolutely a precedent for other victims to seek justice. Of course, there are some who I think the CIA would fight because their cases are very sensitive. But there are so many other people who were senselessly tortured for no reason, people who had no ties to terrorism, but were just in the wrong place in the wrong time. It's going to enable them to seek justice and to seek monetary compensation. Frankly, I think the CIA dodged a bullet here. Now, there is a second case. The American Civil Liberties Union has filed a case on behalf of Abu Zubaydah, arguing that the CIA and Mitchell and Jessen tortured Abu Zubaydah. That case is going to be more sensitive. So the CIA hasn't really put the issue in its entirety behind it yet. We have to wait and see what happens with Abu Zubaydah. My guess is that because the Abu Zubaydah case is so much more serious, because Abu Zubaydah was the guinea pig of the CIA's torture program, that the CIA will seek to have that case dismissed.
Well, in another case of brutal torture, Iraq's Prime Minister has acknowledged the country's security forces abused prisoners during the operation to liberate Mosul from Islamic State. Many were suspected extremist militants who had not faced trial. Please be aware that some very graphic images are about to be shown. An investigation was launched after a photographer released pictures of the torture. Suspects were beaten, raped and tortured to death. We talked to the photographer Ali Arkadi earlier when the images came to light. He described what he witnessed.
I thought they were heroes. They were so brave, fighting on the front lines every day. But then I saw the other side, the torture, the raping, the killing. First, they didn't want me to film the torture and other bad stuff. It affected me, my psychology. I kept thinking about the torture, all those people and their suffering. It got worse and worse, and after 5 weeks, it became so horrible that I decided to publish everything. It was unbearable, but I made myself continue to film because I knew it was important. They tortured people and killed them, over and over.
Well, we heard this morning that the Foreign Minister Al-Jafari has requested the assistant of the UN to look into the crimes committed in Mosul. And that is good, another positive steps, because Iraq do need assistance from the UN. We can feel that maybe some of the pressure has been put on the government to take further investigation into the matter, which is, we find it very positively. That's what we're looking for from the government of Iraq, is to look into this kind of incident, to seize and also to take people into, hold people accountable about these incidents.
RT is campaigning to help orphans stranded in war-torn Iraq find their relatives and return home. They were taken there by radicalized parents who joined Islamic State. We are appealing for family members who might recognize the youngsters to get in touch with us, and some relatives may have been found, but many are still waiting.
Не всех умирали. Я не скажу, где мама. Я скажу, мама, вот за речкой, и все. За речкой были снайперы. Снайперы стреляли в маму сюда и в руку, в голову, в руку. И потом она умерла, потом...
Я сразу опознала своего племянника на видео, как первый раз посмотрела.
А это Дадака и Культейка.
Это ваша девочка?
Это? Это внучка, модельная девочка.
А мама как ее зовут?
Марина.
Мария?
Мадина.
Лоб, глаза, брови, у нее разговор, речь, все у нее, голос у нее. Это Мариам.
She's desperate to prove the girl we filmed in Baghdad is indeed her granddaughter, having lost her once and being in the dark about Mariam's whereabouts for over 3 years.
Они в 2014 году, Новый год, они здесь были. 4-го связь потеряла, с 4-го они ночью уехали. Это муж, видимо, забрал их.
Connection with Mariam and her parents was completely lost for a while, until the family got a phone call from an unknown number.
Вот так мы ушли. Через 2 года, 3 года вернемся. Коран тоже учим. Лечение тоже буду делать, вернемся, сказал.
Since then, only mysterious calls a few times a year. At one point, even a bit of video.
Бабуля, салам алейкум, тетуля, салам алейкум, вот мы кушаем.
To show they got a bright future ahead in the land of jihad. Now that Patimat Zagra is just a step away from bringing her granddaughter back home after all the horrors, we let her record a message to Mariam.
Ты не бойся, я приду за тобой. Вот посмотри, твоя игрушка. Ты узнала или не узнала это?
We have also been contacted by a couple from Tajikistan. They believe they've recognized their granddaughter, who's also called Mariam. The girl says she saw both her parents die and that she is originally from Tajikistan. We're continuing to look for the relatives of these children. If you have any information that could help, please contact us at the email address on screen, children@rttv.ru. Well, this is RT, our main news this Friday, the terrorism in Spain, which has left 13 dead and scores injured in Barcelona. Authorities say an even bigger atrocity was being planned. I'm Ewan O'Neill. Stay with us.
ISIS militants have just shelled the patrol base under Lieutenant Rady Meneses' command. Enemy troop movements have been spotted on the other side of the river. Here in Marawi, 2 groups of militants have joined forces. Both groups' leaders have declared their determination to fight for an independent Islamic State in the Philippines. Even after 2 months of fighting, the army keeps finding hidden weapons and explosives. Mopping up operations in areas where civilians used to live are now a daily occurrence.
Inaanap lang namin yung mga kontrabando tulad ng mga baril or mga illegal
deserted na area na as a scene ng Walking Dead. Unbelievable. Hindi mo ma-expect na mangyayari talaga, especially sa sarili mong lugar, sa hometown mo.
More than 1 million people that died. They killed people, babies, even babies. Now no one's Hutu or Tutsi, everybody's Rwandan and that's it.
Now, if Uber tanks, that's a $70 billion potential loss, and you point out it's mostly private investors, which would include, let's say, Goldman Sachs and others. But if these folks like a Goldman Sachs suffer any losses at all, remember, they then can go to the government for a bailout. So they could go to the government and say, Uber blew up, we need a bailout. And the government, because it's staffed by Goldman Sachs employees, mostly, especially under Trump, they would rubber stamp that bailout. And then to pay for the bailout, they'd have to go into people's pension accounts and they'd have to grab that money, or Wells Fargo would go into your personal account and grab that money.
E é ruim, é porque quando eu vou pra escola, tem polícia aqui, bandido aqui.
Sai da rua, volta! Os nossos mortos têm voz!
Isso foi um crime bárbaro, um crime horroroso. O que ele cometeu com meu filho, ele vai ter que pagar.
Nas ações foram encontrados 7 corpos no interior da comunidade, mas não foram decorrência, até onde a gente tem informações de confronto entre forças policiais.
Tem vergonha?
The new king has arrived.
Hello and welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. It is probably fair to say no other American president is more controversial than Donald Trump. With so many powerful forces arrayed against him, can he succeed, even stay in office? We will see. However, legitimizing the destructive means employed against Trump may be the lasting damage. Cross-talking the state of Trump world, I'm joined by my guest, Samira Khan in Washington. She's a columnist and political scientist. In New York, we have Rob Taub. He is a political pundit and journalist contributing to the Huffington Post. And in Seattle, we have Zach Holler. He is a writer, activist, and progressive YouTuber. All right, crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want, and I always appreciate it. Zach, I always go to the person that gets up earliest for this program, and you got up really early. Probably not too much traffic. That's the upside here. Zach, what is the state of Trump world 6 months into this presidency? Go ahead.
Oh, the state of Trump world is we are kind of surprised to be uniting against him as he takes on the challenge that is the alliance between the Democrats, the Clintons, the Obamas, and the mainstream media, and never expected to need to be behind him with so much solidarity, but he is facing an uphill battle, and we are seeing that loud and clear.
Okay. Samira, in Washington, how do you assess it 6 months in? Because my introduction kind of echoed from what we just heard from Zach. Go ahead.
Well, I don't agree with the liberal portrayal of Trump as uniquely nefarious. I think it's wholly inaccurate, and it whitewashes the crimes of Obama and Bush, past presidencies. And we definitely need to have legitimate criticism of Trump, but sadly, the Democratic Party and the liberal elites are blocking us from doing that with their endless Russia hysteria.
You know, Rob, you kind of reflect upon that because, you know, because it's my job, I have to watch MSNBC, I have to watch CNN. And, you know, it's almost, for me, it's just unwatchable. I'm not learning anything. All I get is this diatribes. And, you know, I think we're adults here, and I think we need to deal with facts and we have to deal with other stories because we don't have a whole lot of facts to grab on except for, well, he had a meeting and then they had a meeting and that embassy and over and over and over again. It's rehashing it here. I mean, how is this doing your party, being a Democrat, any good? Go ahead, Rob.
It's not doing the Democrats any good. I'm going to quote Robert De Niro from Raging Bull. I'm disgusted with the two of yous. It's what's remarkable to me is, okay, I'm 61 years old, so I grew up with a journalist father as well, and I knew all the great newspaper men in New York City. We called them newspaper men then, news people. And here would be my advice to CNN and MSNBC: report the news. You really want to have some compelling shows, report the news. I don't want to hear a pundit just ramble on endlessly and beat a story to death. There's nothing there anymore. And now I'll quote my grandmother, yatata, yatata, yatata.
Okay.
That's all you hear.
Yeah, but that's the point, exactly. But that's exactly the point here, is that, and it seems to me, and I have some distance, quite literally, on this topic, it seems to me it's all boomeranging back at the people that are at war with Donald Trump. And don't get me wrong, and my viewers and my guests here, I am not, you know, a dyed-in-the-wool Trump supporter. I am not. There's many things that infuriate me about him, and many decisions he made I very much disagree with. But the way the media and the deep state and the Democratic Party is treating him is just unconscionable, and it is damaging to the Republican and to Democratic processes and the image of America in the world. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, and thank you for showing leadership on this from a media standpoint, because the American media has completely dropped the ball. Not only are they not covering the crimes of the Obama administration, the Clinton campaign, the Democratic Party, but they're also, the mainstream media basically, through the Podesta emails, who were confirmed authentic by John Podesta himself, the mainstream media has been directed by the former president and by Clinton to cover the crimes of those two entities, to protect them, to use the media to shield them from criticism. The media should be protecting the American citizens and holding power to account. And in fact, they're doing the exact opposite, where they're running on these ridiculous narratives that are not based in fact, when we have thousands upon thousands of Podesta emails and other leaks that show indisputable proof of pay-to-play, of massive corruption scandals, and the American media thinks the Americans just are going to ignore this. The media is complicit in the fraud. They were directed to help Clinton and Obama continue his odious warmongering legacy, and the media is a major problem. And I thank Donald Trump for tweeting about the negative effects of a fraudulent media. The DNC fraud lawsuit is exposing the underbelly of the establishment in this country, and it is not pretty. And we need all Americans to stand up to their local media entities and say, why are you not covering the implications of the DNC fraud lawsuit? Every American citizen in the world is affected by this. It matters to their voting in the future. Every American media entity should be reporting on this dutifully, not helping the people who told them not to report on it.
Okay, Samira, in Washington, one of the things I think is very interesting, we all know that Bernie Sanders and his wife have been facing some legal issues here, but if we kind of step back a little bit here, I get the impression, and I'm not going to be like CNN and fake news, I'm going to give you my impression. I don't have any facts. I'm going to be really honest about that. But it seems to me that the Democratic establishment is trying to squeeze the most popular politician politician in America off the scene, and that is Bernie Sanders here. And it seems to me also the Clinton clan wants to maintain its stranglehold on the Democratic Party, and I think that's not good for the Republicans, not even good for the Democrats at the end of the day. Go ahead, dear, in Washington.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in complete agreement. The Democratic Party, ever since they're suffering a miserable loss to Donald Trump, they have joined with the liberal elites and the corporate media and concocted this myth of Russian interference purely for the obfuscation of the Democratic Party's own deficiencies and to rationalize their defeat to Trump, of course. And at the end of the day, it's harming all of us because this does not force the Democratic Party to change, and they have to change the policies that facilitated Trump's rise to leadership.
Yeah, Rob, can you weigh in on that? Because it seems to me that, you know, pushing this Russiagate thing here. Look, there's a special investigation going on right now that should take its course. Okay, we don't need drip, 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 drip. Okay, we have Mueller out there. Let him do his job here. But can you speak to the fact here that this Russiagate thing is the policy of the Democratic Party because it has one goal, and that is to delegitimize Donald Trump, and it's not working. And and I think we've already mentioned it. You know, it's undoing the legitimacy of the media, and it's undoing the legitimacy of the Democratic Party. I mean, they have to simply move on, or this is going to be a crushing blow for them in 2018. Go ahead, Rob.
Well, I called Donald Trump's whole operation, I'm going to quote Jimmy Breslin now, one of the great newsmen of all time, the gang that couldn't shoot straight. He wrote that book. It's a blithering bunch of incompetence. They're delegitimizing themselves. So I'm going to agree with you. Yes, let's let the investigation take its course because we have too many journalists and the Democrats are trying to be Judge Dredd. You know, you can't, if Trump is blatantly guilty, then let justice take its course because if we follow the rules of law, it's going to take a couple of years to impeach him if he's wrong. What we should be really dealing with is health care right now. And I'm going to the movie quotes, too, today from Jerry Maguire. Show me the money. I want to know who's going to pay for all of this. Obama lied and said it was a tax. He lied and said it wasn't a tax. It's a tax, Obamacare. So is that tax going to be canceled? We have these partisan polarized divisions here between Republicans and Democrats that are not dealing with this issue properly, and you have angry people. We've got an entitlement. It probably can't be taken away. And the Democrats are botching it. They're saying, well, the Republicans should come in with something. Well, work together. Admit that Obamacare is not working and that it's a failure and it's a disaster. Okay, and this is a perfect time for some real bipartisanship. Okay, and Rob is... And the Democrats could come in like white knights, and instead they're blowing it there. Okay, Rob is from the left here. He's criticizing his own party and the left, and I think that takes a lot of dignity, and I think that's great. But let me go to Zach here. Let's put on the other shoe here. I mean, 6 months in, I'm sorry, this administration looks like a group of novices, you know, sophomores, okay? I don't see them leading. I don't see them controlling the story.
Which administration was it?
Okay. Well, no, I think others want, but that may be a point. But I think that, you know, when you're being attacked so endlessly, you need to start stepping up and reacting to the stories to get ahead of stories here. Let me ask that of Zach here before we go to the break here. How do you know, in my question, it was incompetence. Go ahead, Zach.
Look, so we've got a serious problem with journalists who have been defending Hillary Clinton for a long time, and it's really interesting to be here with Rob because the Pied Piper memo that was leaked in the WikiLeaks that showed that the Democratic Party was going to be elevating Donald Trump as the rival to protect Hillary Clinton. Rob's articles that were out in the Huffington Post in 2015 and even 2014 are totally consistent with that strategy. So I'd be curious to hear if he was directed in any way to write any of those articles by the Clinton campaign or the Democratic Party authority, because the real onus is on the Democratic media to recover from what was exposed, what they did to protect Hillary Clinton before anyone had even voted in the primary election. So, Rob, if you have anything to say about that, that'd be great, because any comments about impeachment, anyone who's telling us that impeachment is possible when it requires 2/3 Senate, it's a complete non-starter. Anyone parroting that line is doing a direct disservice to the country. We need to break up big media like we need to break up big banks, and anyone who's not talking about the direct threat of a consolidated media to our democracy is part of the problem, and they are ignoring that right now.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here, folks. We're going to go to a short break, and after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on Trump World. Stay with RT.
We all willingly accepted the risk of being shot, wounded, taken prisoner, but none of us signed up to be friggin' poisoned by our own people.
I've seen stuff that was nuclear, biological, and chemical products that said do not burn, truck tires, all types of styrofoam and polystyrenes, batteries, trucks.
There was a complete denial, I think, at all levels of government that there was any connection between burn pits and what these brave soldiers were suffering from.
To compensate every soldier, Marine, airman, and sailor that was on the ground that are complaining about illnesses from their exposure from the burn pits would literally send the VA broke. And they don't want to pay it, so the waiting and the decades, a lot of those soldiers will die in that time, and they won't have to pay anything.
Call them for help and get the middle finger. The VA's new model is delay, deny, hope you die.
About your sudden passing, I've only just learned. You wore yourself thin, taking your last wrong turn. Your act got up to you as we all knew it would. I'd tell you I'm sorry, if only I could. So I write these last words in hopes to put to rest these things that I never got off my chest. I remember when we first met, my life turned on each breath. But then my feelings started to change. You talked about war like it was a game. Still, some were fond of you, those that didn't like to question or argue. And I secretly promised to never be like you. It's said one does not leave a funeral the same as one enters. The mind gets consumed with death, but this one quite differs. I speak to you now because there were no other takers. To proclaim that mainstream media has met its maker.
Ham and hot dogs may not only be tasty, but also deadly.
A relationship between cancer and nitrate was proved, suggested.
No, proved, and a fairly strong one. There were 2,000 rats involved in the study. It's a very extensive study done by a well-respected scientist.
Do chemicals that add the appetizing pink color really increase the risk of cancer?
Nitrosamines are known to induce damage in the large intestine.
Is it a shared skepticism?
I do not believe that risk is true.
By independent scientists.
So did the meat industry pay you for this?
I received some compensation for my time as well as the others.
Why is that?
The meat lobby, they definitely didn't like what we were doing.
And if you want to learn more, you'll get a definite answer.
Get the fly